Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention, please? We're about to start the program. Our apologies for being a few minutes late. I am told the House is in session for voting, so we are expecting members of Congress from both parties joining us. But if I could ask you to please take your seat as we start the program. Ladies and gentlemen, leaders of the Iranian American communities and friends, thank you so much for joining us on behalf of Organization of Iranian American Communities. I want to welcome you for this pivotal congressional briefing where we stand united across party in support of the people of Iran and their quest for a free and non-nuclear republic and a secular Iran. I think all the events that we have witnessed over the past several days, specifically as it relates to Syria and the fall of Bashar al-Assad regime, really has brought this pressing issue of a global importance, which is the ongoing struggle of democracy and human rights in Syria and in Iran. So as we gather here today, let us recognize this momentous shift in the Middle East that significantly impacts our discussion today. You are going to be hearing from senior members of Congress speaking on that and really addressing what does the recent fall of Bashar al-Assad regime mean for US policy and for the region. Collapse of Assad's regime marks a very significant blow to Tehran's strategy in the region. We actually heard from members of Senate earlier as Senator Shaheen really called that out in terms of a significant blow to Tehran's strategy for the Middle East. For years, Iran has exerted substantial influence through Assad supporting his regime as a linchpin in its network of regional proxies. The end of Assad's regime not only weakens Iran's geopolitical role and stance, it also opens up a new chapter for the people of Iran and a new chapter for the people of Syria. And those who have long suffered under the yoke of these oppressive regimes. And we are here today to discuss what does that mean. In light of these developments, the United States also faces a renewed opportunity to lead in the international scene and international stage. And as members of Congress join us today, we will hear strong bipartisan voice committed to the ideals of freedom and justice. The Iranian American communities are advocating to seize this important moment in history, to affirm our support for those who are fighting for democratic rights in Iran. We stand today on the shoulders of those on the ground and the brave men and women, the brave girls of Iran, the brave youth of Iran, the resistance units who defy the terrorist IRGC and the Basiji forces in the streets, and the brave political prisoners who defy the oppressive measures, even under torture or even facing execution. To effectively counter Tehran's regime influence and support the Iranian people's aspiration for a democratic governance, non-nuclear, and a secular republic, we actually propose several strategic actions for the United States and the incoming administration. Number one, building a global coalition. We must spearhead a formation of a global coalition to diplomatically isolate Tehran's regime. We have repeatedly said the head of snake is in Tehran. The coalition would enhance the impact of sanctions, particularly targeting the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, who are the key instruments of domestic oppression and external aggression. Number two, enhancing sanctions with precision. Following the fall of Assad, we have a strategic window to tighten sanctions that directly affect the economic lifelines of Iran's regime. Those sanctions should focus on the sectors that fund the IRGC's terrorism at home and abroad. Number three, enforcing snapback sanctions. It is imperative that the United States and its European allies lead the charge in enforcing the snapback mechanism of the JCPOA and the UN Security Council resolutions. These sanctions will reinstall all UN sanctions on Iran because of its blatant violations of the agreements that Iran and the Tehran's regime put in place as part of the nuclear agreement. Number 4, promoting human rights and committing to a no appeasement policy. The administration must adopt a resolute policy of no appeasement towards Tehran's regime. This includes ending all, including shadow diplomacy, with Tehran's regime. The historical record is clear that every time there has been an engagement with Tehran's regime, it has yielded to no result, and in fact has emboldened the regime when it comes to its repressive forces at home and regional hegemonic goals and tactics. The United States, we believe, should appoint a special envoy for Iranian human rights to keep the issue, the important issue of the defense of human rights, particularly the political prisoners who are facing torture and execution daily in Iran, to keep focus on that issue and provide recommendation and guidance and coordinate efforts across international community. This should include naming and shaming those judges that are issuing execution orders. This should include the precision sanctions against those who have their hands in the blood of the Iranian people and the resistance movement inside Iran. Number 5, supporting organized resistance. And I would say this is probably one of the most actionable elements of the policy that we believe that needs to be adopted when it comes to the Iranian regime. In recognition of the new geopolitical realities, lessons learned from the pace of change that we just witnessed in Syria and the weakening of Tehran's regime, both domestically and regionally, we argue that the United States formally should engage and align with the legitimate and independent alternative like the National Council of Resistance of Iran. The NCRI has shown steadfast commitment to a democratic Iran and has the organizational structure, integrity, and the international credibility to lead during the transitional period of democracy. As we prepare for the new administration, and particularly within the first 100 days of the new administration and beyond, we argue that we must be guided by our commitment to universal human rights and democratic aspiration of the Iranian people. By taking decisive action, now we can help to ensure the Iranian people achieve the freedom that they long fought for and have paid a very heavy price for this very freedom throughout the last 4 decades and in multiple generations who have fought for freedom in Iran. Just as we hope for enduring peace and democracy in Syria following the fall of Assad, we must prepare ourselves for a regime change by the Iranian people and understand what the agenda of change is by Iran's most organized, most credible resistance movement, which is the National Council of Resistance of Iran. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are waiting for members of Congress to join us today, and I will be coming back to you and introducing our members of Congress. Thank you very much. At this point, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker for the event, Mrs. Maryam Rajavi, the President-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, an extraordinary woman who has launched a political, social, and cultural, and even ideological challenge to the ruling regime of mullahs. Please welcome Maryam Rajavi of the National Council of Resistance of Iran.
Honorable members of the U.S. House of Representatives, ladies and gentlemen, I extend my warm greetings to all of you. I deeply appreciate your efforts in supporting the resistance for freedom and democracy in Iran. The fall of Assad's dictatorship has removed the main regional ally of Khamenei's. The corruption and weakness of Syria's army were not new phenomena. These issues became evident during the Syrian civil war after 2011. But the support provided by the Iranian regime and its proxies kept Assad in power. Khamenei and his Revolutionary Guards Corps, IRGC, gathered 100,000 armed agents to keep Assad's dictatorship in power in Syria, but they failed. But the new reality is the disintegration of Khamenei's forces due to internal and regional crises, regime's failure to meet the basic needs of people and growing popular discontent. The fall of Assad has several key outcomes. The collapse of Syria's dictatorship highlights the extreme weakness of the Iranian regime and its IRGC. Khamenei's strategy of creating proxy groups in the Middle East has failed. As the regime's regional support falls apart, the way for uprisings and regime's overthrow will be opened. Previously, the regime's lobbies in Western countries focused on two tasks. First, creating a false image of the regime's power. Second, denying the existence of a democratic alternative to the regime and a viable resistance movement to overthrow it. But the facts on the ground are very telling. Recently, 9 political prisoners were sentenced to death charged with being members of the PMOI. Alongside this, the regime released a list of IRGC and security forces headquarters that were the targets of the resistance units. The message of these recent developments is clear. The international community must no longer delay siding with the Iranian people who have rejected all kinds of dictatorship, both the Shah and the mullahs. The honorable members of Congress have shown the solution through bipartisan House Resolution 1148. This resolution urges the free world to recognize the right of the Iranian people, protesters, and resistance units to confront the IRGC and suppressive forces in their quest for change. Any serious and effective policy towards the regime must acknowledge the Iranian people's struggle to overthrow it. Honorable representatives, as you know, this resistance was the first to expose the regime's nuclear weapons program and its meddling in the region. After the regime's significant failure in the region, it has accelerated its program to build nuclear weapons to avoid being overthrown. Therefore, it is urgent to activate the snapback mechanism of the UN Security Council Resolution 2231. The only way to prevent a terrorist regime from obtaining nuclear weapons is through its overthrow by the Iranian people and their resistance. The Iranian people and their resistance are now involved in this historic transformation. The angry people, together with the resistance units as part of the Army of Freedom, are the main force for change in Iran. They have been involved in organizing the uprisings along with the National Council of Resistance of Iran, NCRI, the democratic alternative to the regime, and the PMOI, with thousands of experienced members, particularly in Ashraf Tiri in Albania. A wide range of Iranian experts for an essential part of the force needed to build Iran's future. Dear friends, the NCRI seeks not to seize power, but to transfer it to its rightful owners, that is the Iranian people. According to the NCRI's platform, a provisional government will be established for a maximum of 6 months after the regime's overthrow. Its primary task is organizing elections for a constituent assembly and transferring sovereignty to the people's representatives. This resistance seeks a future Iran that emphasizes freedom, gender equality, autonomy for ethnic groups, equality between Shias, Sunnis, and other religions, and the separation of religion and state. It advocates for abolishing the death penalty and establishing a non-nuclear Iran committed to peace in the Middle East. The Iranian resistance expects the US Congress to recognize the Iranian people's struggle to overthrow the regime, impose comprehensive sanctions to block the regime's access to oil revenues and prevent it to obtain nuclear weapons, and end the activities of the regime's agents that are acting as cover groups of the IRGC and the Ministry of Intelligence on the US soil. Everyone agrees that Assad's downfall is a serious defeat for the Iranian regime. However, a greater truth remains that with the determination of the Iranian people and their resistance, this defeat will extend to Tehran. On behalf of the Iranian people and the Iranian resistance, I wish you and the people of the United States a joyful Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Maryam Rajavi. Thank you. And indeed, the fall of Assad's regime will extend to Tehran. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Iranian American Community of Georgia particularly, I would like to welcome Congressman Rich McCormick. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be with you here tonight. This country was established on something that I think we can all relate to, that the people would be more powerful than the government, that you have inalienable rights, no matter what country you live in, no matter where you live in this world, that we have inalienable rights given to us by a maker of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That doesn't extend just to Americans, but people of any nation, anywhere in the world. You know by natural law, if I walked up and slapped you, that's wrong. I don't have to explain that to you. You don't have to write in a book. We know that the regime in Iran is wrong. And we know that it is oppressive, it is evil, and it's supplying weapons to our enemies around the world and oppressing its own people. That if you gave them freedom, they would overthrow this government in a heartbeat. The United States is the biggest, strongest country in the world right now. We shouldn't be waiting for Iran to become a nuclear power before we do something. We shouldn't be waiting for Israel to do our dirty work. If you fire on our Navy using Iranian weapons, I sink your Navy. If you kill Americans with those weapons produced, I take away your production of weapons. If you try to kill my leadership and overthrow my government, I take out your leadership and your government. These are strong words, aren't they? And you know what? I mean them. It's time for leadership that matters, leadership that leads from the front. We shouldn't be kowtowing to a country that's trying to become a nuclear power and actually subjugate its own people, to threaten the rest of the world, to export terrorism and weapons all over the world. Shame on us for standing by. It's time to come from a position of strength. Peace through strength. The Iranian regime only understands one thing, and that's power. We are the most powerful nation in the world for a reason. Not to stand by, not to be passive, not to watch things happen, but to exert what we know is right and true for people all over the world, and this regime needs to be overthrown by all means necessary. You'll see there's a lot of talk right now inside of both parties about isolationism, about becoming a nation that's devoid of world influence. If we're not leaders in the world, who is? If we don't exert our influence, then who will? Someone will take our place. I appreciate that you're all here. You don't have to be here. You're living in America. You can make a good living. You can live your own life, but you understand there's just something bigger than just us, something bigger than just making a living. But we understand the struggles of our family and our friends overseas, and what matters to them matters to us because it affects the entire world. And it will affect our children and our grandchildren. If not addressed now, it won't get better, it will get worse. And so it's time to stop talking in pastels and grays, but in bold colors that everybody understands that if you come after us, we come after you. And if you have a regime exporting terrorism and subjugating a people, we want you to be destabilized and we want you to go away. And that's what America stands for. Thank you for your activism. Thank you for being part of this. Thank you for putting pressure on people to do the right things. I am with you now and with you always. God bless you and Semper Fi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congressman. And indeed, the right policy on Iran is what is needed. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my immense pleasure to introduce our next member of Congress, someone who has been with us on the issue of women and girls in Iran, someone who has spoken on the issue of democracy and human rights, and that is none other than Congresswoman Judy Chu.
Good evening. I'm Congressmember Judy Chu from California's 28th District, and I'm so glad to have this opportunity to celebrate the holiday season here in Washington, D.C. with the Iranian American community, including some of my constituents who traveled all the way from California. For years, I've been proud to stand with you in the fight for human rights and democracy in Iran, and we will continue to work together to ensure that the United States stands up for the people of Iran and makes clear that we are with them in their struggle for peace and freedom. And that is so critical right now because the conditions in the Middle East are rapidly shifting. Just over 2 years ago, I stood with you in the Capitol to celebrate the bravery and the resilience of the millions of Iranians who took to the streets to protest the regime's murder of Mahsa Amini. They endured brutal, violent crackdowns, but showed the world that they were willing to risk everything for their freedom. Today, the Iranian regime remains in power but it has seen its grip on power in the region greatly weakened, especially as its proxies and allies suffer defeat in the devastating wars that they instigated. And that means that it's more important than ever that we stand with the Iranian people and support them in their struggle for freedom. That's why I was so proud to be a co-sponsor of House Resolution 100, the bipartisan resolution that condemns Iranian state-sponsored terror and expresses Congress's support for the people of Iran protesting on behalf of democracy. And this resolution has 243 bipartisan co-sponsors, which is more than half of Congress. I look forward to growing those numbers even more in the 119th Congress and sending an even stronger message to the people of Iran that they are not alone and that we are with them. And that is why it continues to be so important for Iranian Americans like you to bring this message to Capitol Hill and help more members of Congress understand what is happening on the ground. So thank you for being here at this event. I wish you all a happy holiday season and look forward to continuing our work in the new year.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Chu. We are looking forward to expand the support for the people of Iran in U.S. Congress in the coming Congress. So thank you so much for calling action, and that would be the #1 agenda for the Iranian American communities to support you on that endeavor. Ladies and gentlemen, our next member of Congress, a true leader, someone who has set the tone on the bipartisan resolutions, House resolution that stands in support of Iranian people and their call for change from within, someone who has been leading this effort for a long time on multiple House resolutions, and that is none other than Congressman Tom McClintock.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, all the world's religions view this season of the year as a time of hope and renewal. It marks the moment when darkness begins to recede and the light returns to all mankind. Certainly, Iran is now entering such a season. The cold, dark tyranny that engulfed the people of Iran many decades ago now appears to have run its course. Terrorism that it practices upon its own people has brought their patience to an end. The terrorism that was unleashed upon the region is now collapsing in the ruin of Hezbollah and Hamas and now of the Syrian dictatorship. And the United States is about to inaugurate a new president who will once again enforce all of the sanctions against Iran. The days of America sending cash on cargo pallets to the mullahs and propping them up diplomatically and economically are about to end, and this Congress will stand by him. You know, everywhere the Iranian dictators look, they see growing resistance at home, opposition abroad, and decay from within. This Iranian regime is like a rotting porch that still maintains its shape and form, but is weak and hollowed out and only awaits a sudden gust of wind that will bring it crashing down. I think all of us here can sense that this moment is rapidly approaching, that the hope in this room and in rooms like this across the world is palpable. And the more hopeful we are, the more fearful must be the criminal gang that has tortured the Iranian people for so long. Freedom and justice walk hand in hand. Freedom for the Iranian people means justice for the Iranian dictators. And we can all sense that that day is coming soon, and so can they. you've all worked so long and so hard for that day. And it wouldn't surprise me if it comes before the annual return of this season of hope next year. And then we can add to hope the joy of liberation. Next year, that celebration won't be in rooms like this around the world. It will be in the streets of Tehran and in town squares across all of liberated Iran. A new season is about to begin for the people of Iran, one in which they can restore the freedom, peace, justice, and prosperity that is the natural right of all of humanity. And with these blessings of liberation can come the redemption of the destiny of Iran. Persia is one of the oldest civilizations in human experience, and one of the proudest. The despotic outlaws that seized its government, tormented its people, threatened its neighbors, and stole its riches are but a fleeting, sorry, tawdry chapter in its long and glorious history. With the resolute opposition of the people of Iran, supported by the diaspora of Iranian expatriates and free people around the world, and under the banner of the National Council of Resistance in Iran, I believe that Iran will soon shake off its shackles, bring its tormentors to justice, restore democracy and freedom, and resume its historic legacy as in the days of old. As Maryam Rajavi has said, the NCRI's objective is not to seize power, but to restore it to its rightful owners, the people of Iran. Ladies and gentlemen, in this season of hope and renewal for humanity, let us rededicate ourselves to achieving an era of hope and renewal for Iran and devote ourselves to the greatest of all celebrations to be held next year in Tehran. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Indeed, Congressman, next year in Tehran. Ladies and gentlemen, our next member of Congress, someone who's been on the issue of human rights, on the issue of democracy, and has been dedicated in the support of his community, please welcome Congressman Pete Sessions.
Thank you. Thank you and welcome. What a delight it is to have you join us as we begin the close of this year and moving to the next year. Seeds of freedom have been spread all around the world, and you will be the recipient of some of those seeds of not just change, but of hope that are growing, I think, around the world. An opportunity for you to be here is more than just a celebration among each other, to look at the marvelous advantages that you have brought, not in telling your story to Washington, but in the world knowing the truth about the government that so many people in Iran live under. The opportunity that we have, that so many of these speakers speak of, I think comes from the reality that it is now time to tell the truth and expect our leaders to follow that same discussion as they take shape. It would be easy for me to say that I believe that Donald Trump will do that, but I do believe it. It would be easy for me to say that great days, as Tom McClintock, the young congressman from California, said, that things will flourish this next year. I believe they will. But what's important is that we stand together with you and want a regime change, that we not only will talk about that, but we will insist on it. And America's foreign policy will not just speak with that voice, but speak with our friends and neighbors. We will speak around the world. We will speak, our new UN representative will speak in New York City about the need for regime change because, in fact, they are brutal thugs to their own people. So please know this as you come, during not just this holiday season, but as you gather together, you have done the spade work that is necessary by meeting with members. You have taken time for the last all 26 years that I've been a member of Congress to tell your story, to expect that we would listen and that we would respond accordingly. So I will say this, the success for Rain Dance has a lot to do with timing. I think the seeds were on the ground. Thank you very much for being with us, and I wish you the very best.
Thank you so much, Congressman Sessions, and it is indeed time for the international community to accept the fact that the Iranian people are going to change this regime. So our next member of Congress is a real fighter who fights with passion and compassion. She leads on the issue of Iranian women as a co-chair of the Iranian Women's Caucus in US Congress. She has met with Maryam Rajavi. She has spoken at international events on the issue of Iran policy and the rights of Iranian women and girls, someone who fights along the side with the people of Iran, particularly the women of Iran who are leading this change. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Congresswoman Mace.
Thank you. Thank you, and God bless you. After Syria will be Iran. And when Iran falls, Maryam Rajavi will be leading her from the front lines. I have met many Iranian Americans and Iranians overseas in this fight as part of the resistance. Many Iranian women. And I have to tell you, if I'm being honest, Iranian women are some of the most beautiful women in the world. Iranian women are some of the smartest women in the world. And Iranian women are some of the strongest women in the world. Because Iranian women are in Iran right now. They are leading the resistance. They are leading the resistance inside Iran and out. And because of them and because of what they are doing, Iran will fall. So I'm here tonight to condemn the regime in Iran. I'm here tonight to condemn the Shah in Iran and his dictatorship of oppression, his dictatorship inside Iran, and I want to support all Iranians who want freedom and a free and democratic Iran. I support all of you. And on January 20th, the United States of America will have a new president, a new leader of the free world. On January 20th, we'll have a new administration. And on January 20th, we'll have more freedom fighters looking out for the good and great people of Iran. And not only will we support freedom in Iran, we will put an end to the proxy wars of Iran in Hezbollah, in Hamas, and in Yemen with the Houthis. We are done. America is done with Iran. So tonight, as we all stand together, members of both parties across the spectrum, the message that emerges is one of solidarity and one of hope. Let's fight like hell, and I've seen a few fights myself, but we have to fight like hell for freedom, fight like hell for liberty, and fight like hell for the people of Iran. Thank you, and God bless. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And yes, we will fight like hell for a free Iran. Ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned, Congresswoman Mace was a co-chair with the late Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who is in this room with us. She's watching over all of us. We will never forget as she fought during the darkest time when she talked about her sister, Maryam Rajavi. We will never forget the legacy and the courage and the hope that she left us with. And with that, it is my immense pleasure to introduce her daughter, who's standing in her shoes this evening. Please welcome Congresswoman Erica Lee Carter.
Thank you. Thank you. I hear the cheers of freedom. I hear the sounds of victory for Iran. And I'm grateful to be here in your long-standing friendship, standing beside her, fighting with her for your freedom, for the freedom of the people of Iran. Gratitude, I'm here with the Organization of Iranian American Communities. And your unwavering dedication to freedom, justice, and democracy is not only inspiring, but it is essential to achieving a better future for Iran. Your movement has always inspired hope and resilience. It's why my mother worked tirelessly with you and for you. It amplifies the voices of those that cannot be heard, and you remind the world of the importance of standing up for human rights and liberty. It was deeply important to her to work closely with Vice President Kamala Harris and President Biden to stand against the human rights violations throughout Iran and stand for liberty and justice and freedom. She believed in your mission. She admired your courage and fought to ensure that your voices were heard throughout Capitol Hill and beyond, nationally, nationwide, worldwide, that Iran deserves to be free and democratic for all. As was already mentioned, she was a proud co-founder and co-chair of the Iranian Women's Congressional Caucus. And she was so proud to uplift the voices of women who are leading this fight for democracy and freedom. It was her legacy. I thank you for honoring it today and reaffirming the importance of your work that must continue. I heard a call that next year in this season, we'll be celebrating a free Iran. And so I look forward to that. So as I close, I just say that it is only by remaining and uplifting our voices and speaking out and never giving up that we will end the indiscriminate violation of all human rights in Iran, and that we will open the doors to freedom and opportunity. I am proud to stand with you, and I will continue to be with you until we end the despotic Iranian regime forever. Thank you, and may God bless you.
Congresswoman, all I can say is your mother is very proud and watching over you as we speak. I am reminded of her where she would always come and talk to us about never give up, never give in, and never give out. So thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce our next member of Congress, a member of Congress who has spoken on the right policy on Iran, the regime change by the people of Iran who are seeking a non-nuclear secular republic. Please welcome Congressman Ronnie Jackson.
Well, thank you all for having me. It looks like I might be your last speaker, so I'll try to be brief here, but I just wanted to stop by and tell you thank you for what you're doing. I'm, of course, the congressman from the 13th Congressional District of Texas. That's the top of Texas. Not a big Iranian population there, but some of the biggest supporters for your cause in this country, in Texas, in that part of Texas in particular. I'm on the Armed Services Committee, I'm on Foreign Affairs, and I'm on the Intelligence Committee. And what they all have in common is that Iran is a very common, frequent topic of conversation in these committees. And it's because the brutal regime is causing so many problems, not just for our country, but for the safety and security of the world. I totally support, and I take every opportunity to get on board with anything that comes down the legislative pike that supports a free, democratic, non-nuclear Iran, a country where its people who want to be free, who want to be a part of the Middle Eastern and the world community can do so without being repressed. I promise you that I will do everything I can to continue to fight that fight with you. I will tell you, we have lots of bipartisan support, so this is not a political comment, because we have lots of strong Democrats, like you've heard from just speaker just before me, and lots of Republican support. This is a bipartisan effort to make sure that we free the people of Iran. I will tell you, however, though, I think that there is a change coming that will be that will make a massive difference. I think that we haven't had a lot of in my opinion, we haven't had a lot of really good leadership from the White House on holding Iran accountable for some of the stuff that's happened. I can assure you, having spent time in the White House with President Trump and being one of his senior advisors, that that's about to change. Donald Trump, President Trump, when he comes in, will make sure that the Iranian regime is held responsible. He will enforce the sanctions. He will stop the export of terror. They've been doing this for a while via their proxies, whether it's Hamas or Hezbollah or the Houthis, bringing terror to the region, potentially terror to the world. That has to stop. We need an Iran that's a partner in Middle East peace. I think that is on the horizon. I know the Iranian people are good, strong people that have wanted to get out of this situation for a long time, and they've wanted to be part of the global community, and they just want peace, like all the rest of us. I promise you that I will continue to work as hard as I possibly can. I will be available to you. If there's anything you need from me, from the 13th Congressional District of Texas, you can count on me. I am all in the fight for your cause. Thank you so much. God bless you all. Thank you.
Congressman Jackson, thank you so much. And you're indeed right on in terms of this issue. It is a bipartisan issue. We are so proud to have such a strong support from both parties when it comes to the right policy on Iran. And on that front, as we talked about the Congressional Caucus of Iranian Women that has been co-chaired with Congresswoman Mace, along with the late Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, I am very pleased to announce that Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren has agreed to step in as the Democratic co-chair of the Iran Congressional Women's Caucus. We are so proud to continue to have her support. I actually have her written note that she has sent to this event expressing her regret for not being able to join us. So allow me to read her message for you. I regret very much that I cannot be with you. I am required to be in a Democratic Steering and Policy Committee at this time. Thank you for your persistent advocacy. Together, we will one day see an Iran that is democratic, secular, free, and non-nuclear. Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren from California. Thank you so much to Congresswoman. So at this point, as we are expecting for more members of Congress to join us, I actually would like to introduce a member of Organization of Iranian American Community, young professional member, an attorney at law, who has been focusing on the right Iran policy to share with us her perspective on some of the discussions that's taken place so far on the issue of Iran policy. Please welcome Ms. Anna Sami.
Thank you, everyone. It's a real honor and pleasure to be here with you today. The end of the year, the Christmas season obviously is here. the congressmen and women who we work with day in and day out, who encourage us and continue to support us. It really is very incredibly meaningful to us. We are so thankful to be able to share this day and this stage with them. Ladies and gentlemen, we heard a speech just a few minutes ago from Mrs. Maryam Rajavi, who is speaking with regards to the future of Iran. And in particular, now that the regional aspect of has changed with the fall of Assad. And I just wanted to reiterate some of the points, these very, not only aspirational, these are very practical points that she's making about how freedom will be brought to Iran. Mrs. Rajavi has spent her entire life trying to bring change to Iran. I want to emphasize Mrs. Rajavi's points, which I think bear mentioning over and over again. The most important point is that the NCRI's objective here is not to seize power, but to restore power to the rightful owners, which are the people of Iran. According to the NCRI, National Council of Resistance of Iran's platform, the process for transferring power after the regime's overthrow consists of very clear delineated steps. One is the establishment of a provisional government, as she stated, which will be in power for a maximum of about 6 months. And the primary responsibility of this provisional body will be to organize elections for a constituent assembly. Once the Constituent Assembly is formed, the provisional government will step down, marking the completion of the NCRI's mission. Sovereignty will then be transferred to the people's representative in the Constituent Assembly. These representatives will appoint a new government for a 2-year term to draft, approve, and hold a referendum on the Constitution of the new republic. This structured approach ensures that, with a viable alternative in place, there will be no room for chaos or further bloodshed. Millions of Iranians abroad, equipped with their expertise, resources, support, will return to Iran. Regarding the international community, the focal element of its policy toward Iran should be recognizing the right of the Iranian people to initiate change and acknowledging the decisive role of the organized resistance. And with that, I think that it bears mentioning that there are many, many other points. These are just some particular ones that very practical points that have been brought to light. Again, the main message of Mrs. Rajavi for this Congress, the main ask, the request, is that we recognize the Iranian people's struggle to overthrow the regime, that we impose comprehensive sanctions to block the regime's access to oil revenues and to prevent it from obtaining a nuclear weapon, and finally, to end the activities of the regime's agents, which have already happened, that are acting as cover groups for the IRGC and the Ministry of Intelligence on U.S. soil. These are the main focal points that will assist with the downfall of the regime. And I think everyone here agrees that the Assad's downfall has been a serious threat to the Iranian regime. However, a greater truth remains that with the determination of the Iranian people and their resistance, this defeat will indeed extend to Tehran, as many of our Congress members have reiterated. And on behalf of the Iranian people and the Iranian resistance, I truly wish you and everyone in your families and the people of this Congress a joyful Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. And I think it's so important as you emphasized, on the issue of Iran policy that is actionable. It's not theoretical, it is practical. So let me also introduce our next speaker from Organization of Iranian American Communities, this time from Texas. We have always had very strong presence in Texas, both in the at the community level as well as in US Congress with the support of members of Congress from Texas. And that is Parsa Arya, who is a recent graduate from Texas A&M, who's going to speak about the view of Iranian people and the policy to consider, as well as the message of the youth. So please welcome Parsa Arya.
Hi. Good evening. And thank you for having me. We've all been attacked by the regime in some form or another. We've lost loved ones to the regime or its proxies. Their media campaigns have slandered and divided us. They've tried to undermine our elections. It isn't enough for the regime to terrorize its own people. They've exported their terror to us and our allies. The fall of Assad marks the beginning of an end of the regime's rule. This is as sensitive a time for the regime as it is for all of us, which is why we cannot afford to give them a sliver of hope to continue their tyranny and terrorism. A wave of change is washing over the region, and it can produce feelings of anxiety because we're not sure exactly what's going to happen, who's going to be in power. But we can rest assured with the NCRI and the leadership of Maryam Rajavi. They've been tried and tested for decades, and they withstood and withheld their ground and have continued to selflessly fight for democracy, freedom, and justice, not just in this country, not just in Iran, but for this country as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Parsa. I am pleased to introduce our next member of Congress, Congressman Glenn Grothman from Wisconsin. Congressman Grothman has been speaking on the right policy on Iran on multiple occasions with all of us. Please welcome Congressman.
I'm happy to speak today to the Organization of Iranian American Communities. You know, not huge where I'm from Wisconsin, but I know a growing community throughout the United States is people who leave Iran and come to America. And one thing I notice about these Iranian immigrants is without fail, they are wildly successful, right? They have good job, they work hard, their children do well at school, their children have good jobs, and it is overall a tremendous success. So when you see all the successful people in America who either came from Iran or their parents came from Iran, you can't help thinking, why aren't these people so successful or their cousins so successful if they are still in Iran, right? And this is the message we must carry to Iran. The Iranian people are capable of so many great things, except for they're stuck with the Iranian government, right? And people have to ask themselves, or if they have cousins or friends in Iran, what is the difference between being in America or being in Iran? Not just monetarily, not just educationally, but freedom-wise. And are the Iranians in America abusing their freedom? Not at all, right? They are thriving in America. So somehow our goal here must be to have the people who remain in Iran get a different government and thrive in Iran just as their cousins are thriving in America today, right? Iran itself should be the wealthiest country in that part of the world, I would think. But it's not solely because they are being held back by a rogue regime that does not believe in giving the people of Iran either the monetary, either freedom monetary-wise, economically-wise, freedom educationally-wise. And if we only had a different government, the Iranians, can I say Persians? I don't know. The Persians still in Iran would be thriving like the Persians are, or the people with Persian ancestry are, in the United States today. So I am honored to have a chance to talk to you, and I hope everybody in Iran knows about the freedoms that there are in America and ask themselves, why can't we have the same freedoms and opportunities in Iran that our cousins are enjoying and making so much of in America? So I hope, I've spoken at this dinner before, my hopes and prayers are that one of these years, one of these Decembers when you come to Congress, that we are celebrating a new Iran and a close relationship with the United States and Iran. And you one more time, Iran and the Middle East, will return to the jewel that it has been so much in history. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Congressman Grothman spoke about the talent and the thriving Iranian American communities and how much potential Iranian people have when Iran is free. On that front, I must admit, we, the community of Iranian Americans with 40 chapters across the US, have not only been focusing on the issue of democracy in the House, we also have been working with our senators. So at this point, I would like to see a video clip from the activities that we have done in US Senate and share that with you. And it really is a window into the impact and the effort that we have when it comes to the issue of democracy and human rights.
I want to thank you for coming to be here today, particularly to the Edward M. Kennedy Caucus Room. That name means a great deal to me, more than most people would know. I had the privilege of working for Senator Kennedy for 7 years as his national security advisor. Senator Kennedy taught me a lot, and most importantly, he taught me that American policy and foreign policy must be bipartisan, must be effective, and must ensure success. So when NCRI scheduled this event over a month ago, no one could have predicted that it would occur against the backdrop of the toppling of the despised Assad dictatorship, an event that sets the stage for confronting the mullahs on their home turf, a unique inflection point. I don't like to use this phrase, inflection point, but this really is one of those rare moments where this regime is on its back foot.
President-elect understands how much I appreciate her decades of leadership, her vision for a peaceful transition, not one that results in empowering any other new set of leaders, but one that actually results in empowering the Iranian people.
As all of you know, Iran has been dealt a significant blow. The leadership in the country is on their back feet. The events in Syria demonstrate the fundamental weakness at the core of Iran's regional strategic policies. And I don't think anyone here is surprised by that, because you've been fighting that for many of you your entire lives.
Remember, the people of Iran don't want this regime. They don't support this regime. Just like the people in Syria didn't support Assad. They were threatened and they were terrorized into being mollified while they were there, but they didn't support the regime, and the people of Iran don't support them. They don't support the regime, the theocracy, the ruling mullahs. There will be no peace in the Middle East as long as this regime is in control. We know that.
That injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. What the Iranian people are suffering under, an unjust regime that conducts horrific violence against its own people, that violates human rights and civil rights, that tortures and kills and abducts people within their own country. That is not just an Iranian problem, that is an American problem. And we know, as Iran is the #1 exporter of global terrorism and violence and killing, that they export anti-democratic, vicious ideals, that we are not safe, that our cause is the Iranian people's cause, that injustice in that country upsets the global order.
I carry a small book with me. This is the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. It is, the oath of office is the one that the President makes and officers of the American military carry. I propose that in the near future, Iranian people be given a book that will have two things to it. Part one is Mrs. Rajavi's 10-point plans. You can.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I'd like to introduce our next member of Congress, someone who actually really doesn't need an introduction because he's been with us through the thick and thin. I remember the congressional hearings where he was talking to the State Department back in a day where Iran's primary opposition group, the Mujahideen Khalq, MEK, were wrongfully designated by the State Department, and how this member of Congress was holding the State Department officials accountable to explain the why. Explain the why, and the why was never there. And it was politically motivated, and that's why the MEK got delisted. And since then, this member of Congress has been a pillar of majority of the bipartisan House resolution on the issue of democracy, on the issue of human rights, on the issue of Iranian people's right to self-defense and resist the regime in Tehran. So with that, please welcome, put your hands together for Congressman Brad Sherman.
Thank you so much. I'm Brad Sherman from America's best named city, Sherman Oaks. And for 28 years, some people in this room have heard me say that because for 28 years, we've been looking forward to the day when the mullahs are out and democracy is in. And that is why the National Council of Resistance of Iran and the Organization of Iranian American Communities has worked so hard to bring freedom to the people of Iran. And never has it been so close. For decades, we saw that the regime controlled a powerful army, that it had a Revolutionary Guard Corps, that it had an alliance like this with another government, namely that of Syria. And just in the last week, we have seen Assad tour his new dacha outside of Moscow. They are building several more dachas there so that the supreme leader will have a place to live when he flees Iran. We have seen Hezbollah gutted. We have seen Assad surrender. But we've seen Russia, their powerful ally, too preoccupied with Ukraine. But what hasn't been commented on is that the Iranian government was not able to send any help to Damascus. Not one brigade of the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps was sent. Now, they'll say they couldn't get there by air because of Israel. They couldn't get there across Iraq because of, well, because they didn't have the troops to spare. Because what few loyalists they have are busy in the streets of Shiraz and the streets of Tehran looking for a woman who shows as much hair as I have to do God knows what to her. So we come together after what for me has been only 28 years of struggle, what for you has been even longer, in the hopes that the Iranian people will exercise their right to demand democracy and freedom and a government that is as good as the people of Iran. So there is much for us to do. One of those, of course, is to pass the resolution that was just mentioned that I was proud to co-sponsor in this Congress and that received the support of both parties. I know we had a majority of the Congress. I think we had a majority of both political parties as co-sponsors. And that is why I also joined with you in co-sponsoring House Resolution 1148, condemning the Iranian regime's terrorism, regional proxy war, internal suppression. And we've seen all the layers of that regime implode. I want to thank the MEK's chairwoman, Maryam Rajavi, for her work and for her support of women's rights in Iran. And I want to thank the people of Syria for demonstrating that when you have a regime that has a state army, that has a secret police that has killed over 100,000 people, when you have a regime that's driven millions of people into exile, that regime can fall in 11 days. And I want to thank the National Council of Resistance in Iran that back in 2002 broke the story for the world to see that Iran had an underground nuclear facility in Natanz.
America and the world owe a debt of gratitude to you. We have seen levels of suppression in Iran that even exceed the terrible and macabre story that is revealed now by reporters in Syria. We saw so many massacred in 1988 and since then. And I know that the friends and family and loved ones of those who died in 1988 might have despaired and wondered whether those sacrifices were in vain. But those friends and family may yet live to see democracy in Iran. So we have to do everything we can in the United States to show that we stand with the Iranian people, to show that we stand with Iranian resistance groups, perhaps some funding that isn't publicized, but certainly publicized support, that all over the world, America stands with democracy. And the current leaders of Iran will soon be standing in Red Square in Moscow. I'm Brad Sherman. I look forward to working with you. We've never been this close. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Congressman Sherman, it is indeed, we have never been this close, and we are very, very close. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to introduce Political Director of Organization of Iranian American Communities. Congressman Sherman talked about the bipartisan resolutions, and I think it is fitting for Dr. Majid Sadiqpour to talk to us about some of the political significance of these bipartisan resolutions we've had today. Please welcome Dr. Sadiqpour.
Thank you. First of all, I want to, on behalf of the community and a lot of you who are here and present, thank the members of Congress on both sides of the aisle who have come to support our efforts to empower the voice of the people of Iran, which is nothing but democratic change, regime change in Iran. A few days ago, our community had the privilege of hosting bipartisan members of the United States Senate on the other side of the Independence Avenue over here. And what we saw was bipartisan members of the United States Senate saying what we have more than 4 decades have been asking the international community to do, which is to support the Iranian people's desire for complete and unequivocal change, regime change. That means that the people of Iran will have to sacrifice. But they have been doing that. Iran is one of the leading executioners in the world. In 2023, a little bit over a year ago, Iran executed 74% of all executions that were carried out on the face of the planet. But yet Iran only holds 1% of the global population. That number is significantly higher in 2024. Since Pezeshkian took office in Iran, more than 600 people have been executed. That's August 1st to now. 600 people. The regime is killing at this rate, not because it is stable, but precisely because it is unstable. Mr. Sherman just mentioned it. Bipartisan members of Congress before me mentioned it also, that this regime is weak. It is rotten from within. It is reeling from a population that is yearning and is working actively to overthrow it. Our desire to support the Iranian people's aspirations for regime change, a democratic regime change where a republic exists, where a ballot box is ultimately the decision maker for the population, is rooted in our trust in the people of Iran. The people of Iran have been asking and fighting for a democratic republic, fighting for secularism for almost a century. 1906, 1953, 1979, and we are at the precipice of another revolution in Iran. And so it is in that context that House Resolution 100, House Resolution 374 before it, House Resolution 1148 that Congressman Brad Sherman is a co-sponsor of, speak to is that desire, that long-standing desire for democratic republic in Iran. Now, what are we asking for the global community to do? I think some of those were mentioned here today, the 6 points that Maryam Rajavi outlined. We are asking for the international community to support the Iranian people's efforts by politically and morally support the Iranian people and their organized resistance. What happened in Syria was essentially a revolution where the people of Syria overthrew a dictatorial regime. What was in front of them was the lack of political support for the opposition and was, in fact, complete engagement with the ruling regime in Syria. When that political support was withdrawn, when active military support for the regime was withdrawn, that regime, as Maryam Rajavi mentioned, melted into oblivion. Iran is not necessarily any different. Iranian resistance have an organized opposition movement. The resistance units in Iran are capable. What they are missing is the political support from the free world. What they're missing is for the regime to be held accountable in the global arena for its behavior, for its leaders to be held accountable in the International Criminal Court, that it be kicked out of the UN. Those are steps that will empower those young men and women who are willing and have been sacrificing their lives to free Iran from the grasp of the medieval dictators that are currently in power. So with that, I want to thank you all for being here. And it is a privilege to host so many members of Congress here. And I want to thank you for making this a possibility. And for that the members of Congress have the platform to share their thoughts, not only with the American people, but with the free world beyond. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sadehpour. Our next speaker is a student of law, a member of Organization of Iranian American Community's student chapter. Please help me welcome Miki Mohammadi.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Earlier today, Maryam Rajavi highlighted several key outcomes of Assad's fall, and I think it'd just be important to reiterate those. The new reality is the deintegration of Khomeini's forces. Due to internal and regional crisis, the regime's failure to meet the basic needs of people, and the growing popular disconnect. The fall of Assad has several key outcomes. One, the collapse of Syria's dictatorship highlights the extreme weakness of the Iranian regime and the IRGC. Two, Khomeini's strategy of creating proxy groups in the Middle East has failed. Three, as the regime's regional support falls apart, the way for uprising the regime's overthrow will be opened. And previously, the regime's lobbies in Western countries focused on two tasks. First, creating a false image of the regime's power, and second, denying the existence of a democratic alternative to the regime. and a viable resistance movement to overthrow it. However, the facts on this ground are very telling. Thank you all.
I want to thank you for coming to be here today, particularly to the Edward M. Kennedy Caucus Room. That name means a great deal to me, more than most people would know. I had the privilege of working for Senator Kennedy for 7 years as his national security advisor. Senator Kennedy taught me a lot, and most importantly, he taught me that American policy and foreign policy must be bipartisan, must be effective, and must ensure success. So when NCRI scheduled this event over a month ago, no one could have predicted that it would occur against the backdrop of the toppling of the despised Assad dictatorship, an event that sets the stage for confronting the mullahs on their home turf, a unique inflection point. I don't like to use this phrase, inflection point, but this really is one of those rare moments where this regime is on its back foot.
President-elect understands how much I appreciate her decades of leadership, her vision for a peaceful transition, not one that results in empowering any other new set of leaders, but one that actually results in empowering the Iranian people.
As all of you know, Iran has been dealt a significant blow. The leadership in the country is on their back feet. The events in Syria demonstrate the fundamental weakness at the core of Iran's regional strategic policies. And I don't think anyone here is surprised by that, because you've been fighting that for many of you your entire lives.
Remember, the people of Iran don't want this regime. They don't support this regime. Just like the people in Syria didn't support Assad. They were threatened and they were terrorized into being mollified while they were there, but they didn't support the regime, and the people of Iran don't support them. They don't support the regime, the theocracy, the ruling mullahs. There will be no peace in the Middle East as long as this regime is in control. We know that.
That injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. What the Iranian people are suffering under, an unjust regime that conducts horrific violence against its own people, that violates human rights and civil rights, that tortures and kills and abducts people within their own country. That is not just an Iranian problem, that is an American problem. And we know, as Iran is the #1 exporter of global terrorism and violence and killing, that they export anti-democratic, vicious ideals, that we are not safe, that our cause is the Iranian people's cause, that injustice in that country upsets the global order.
I carry a small book with me. This is the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. It is, the oath of office is the one that the President makes and officers of the American military carry. I propose that in the near future, Iranian people be given a book that will have two things to it. Part one is Mrs. Rajavi's 10-point plans. You can. Part two is the Constitution, the new Constitution of the government of Iran. We'll work on this project, and I hope we have these books with a 10-point plan as a reminder that this is Jeffersonian democracy that we're talking about.
That Iran is not as strong as you think they are. They're a paper tiger, and you can push back on them, and I think you can push them to defeat.
The results on Election Day, November 2024, were consequential for the United States, and they were consequential for the world. But there is nobody on planet Earth who had a worse day on Election Day than the Ayatollah Khamenei. The Ayatollah is a theocratic, homicidal, genocidal lunatic.
The first strategic imperative: the people of Iran do not want this current regime. We must support the people of Iran and neutralize this current regime. The second strategic imperative: generating peace across planet Earth will not occur until we find ways to allow for a peaceful Middle East. And peace in the Middle East will be achieved via a free and democratic Republic of Iran.
The Yemeni people and the Iranian people deserve a chance to rid themselves of the tyranny of the Iranian regime and their proxy, and I hope that will come very fast.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we have heard in a bipartisan language that the change for Iran is near. Congressman Sherman talks about change is happening, change is coming. Also, Congresswoman Mace talked about Maryam Rajavi leading that change. And everyone spoke about the National Council of Resistance of Iran as a forefront of the opposition that's going to lead that change. So I think it is very fitting for us to really understand who is NCRI and what is their plan. Maryam Rajavi has presented a comprehensive roadmap to dismantle the current regime in Tehran. And she has really outlined a path to a peaceful transfer of power to a democratically elected representative of the Iranian people. That's why today she was talking about the 6-month transitional plan. Her 10-point plan, which is also supported by the majority of the Congress, underscores commitment to democracy, human rights, and gender equality. You just saw General Jones holding up the American Constitution and Declaration of Independence and likening that as a Jeffersonian democracy to what Maryam Rajavi's 10-point plan is. This plan has already received endorsements of more than 125 heads of states and more than 4,000 parliamentarians across the globe. This is the reason why we say the National Council of Resistance of Iran has the international credibility. No other group, or even including those prop-up oppositions and the fake oppositions that the Iranian regime is trying to promote in order to muddy the water, is able to even come close to the track record of the National Council of Resistance of Iran. So the question is, what is the process of regime change, and what is the role of the organized resistance? Today we heard from Maryam Rajavi talking about Army of Freedom. You have heard references to the resistance units. Those are the people on the ground. Those are the brave men and women, the youth on the ground that are risking their lives day in and day out to confront the Revolutionary Guards and the Basiji forces. It is through the relentless effort and a courageous resistance that they are dismantling the barriers of oppression. It really embodies a pivotal force for change that stands as the freedom fighters of Iran are showing us. This is the path to change Iran. This is the reason that members of Congress are saying and insisting in more than one bipartisan resolution that the Iranian people have the right to overthrow the regime in Tehran. And at the heart of this resistance movement, it is an opposition group, Mujahideen Khalq, the MEK, that has more than 60 years of struggle against both the dictatorship of the Shah and the current dictatorship of the Mullah. When you look at the 60 years of struggle, all the lessons learned, understanding what it takes to fight against dictatorship, making sure that the public understands more than what we don't want, but what we want instead as an alternative, that is a huge asset that the people of Iran have. And they have been advocating for this change and making sure that the international community recognizes their voice, their agenda, their roadmap for regime change. That is a huge opportunity for the international community to embrace those change agents that are willing to pay the price, are organized, and have the right leadership to bring it home. So, the MEK is part of a broader coalition, which is the National Council of Resistance of Iran. The NCRI is a democratic alternative that has 457 members from a broad range of political backgrounds, with women representing over 50% of its membership. It is no wonder that we see women leading change. It is no wonder that we see the slogan that says women resistance freedom. The banners of women resistance freedom that are hung in the city centers to challenge this regime, because women are willing to pay the price, and they have paid the price. The NCRI champions a comprehensive program that advocates for freedom of, obviously, gender equality, autonomy of ethnic groups, because the Iranian nation is only as beautiful as its diversity and the tapestry of all the ethnic groups that we have in our country, equality between Shia and Sunni Muslim, and all protection of all religious rights, protection of all minorities. It supports the separation of church and state, religion and state. This is the reason that we insist on the issue of secular, free Iran. It supports the rejection of monarchy in its entirety. This is the reason that we support Republic Iran. And it supports a non-nuclear, and this is the reason that we say Iran can indeed live in peace and prosperity with its neighbors. So when we look at this agenda for change, when we look at the price that has been paid for democracy and freedom, and when we look at the organizational capability and the propensity of the Iranian nation, it is no wonder that today you heard in a very strong bipartisan message that change is near, change is happening sooner than we all think. Now the real question is Washington ready for Iranian regime change? And that's what we're working on. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
I want to thank you for coming to be here today, particularly to the Edward M. Kennedy caucus room, that name means a great deal to me, more than most people would know. I had the privilege of working for Senator Kennedy for 7 years as his national security advisor. Senator Kennedy taught me a lot, and most importantly, he taught me that American policy and foreign policy must be bipartisan, must be effective, and must ensure success. So when NCRI scheduled this event over a month ago, no one could have predicted that it would occur against the backdrop of the toppling of the despised Assad dictatorship, an event that sets the stage for confronting the mullahs on their home turf, a unique inflection point. I don't like to use this phrase, inflection point, but this really is one of those rare moments where this regime is on its back foot.
President-elect understands how much I appreciate her decades of leadership, her vision for a peaceful transition, not one that results in
I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I know members of Congress, there was a lot of voting and a lot of committee meetings that was taking place at the same time of our event, but we are so very proud and very pleased that they were able to join us. So thank you again, and I wish you a very, very happy holidays. Thanks, everyone.